She's just pretending." My mother-in-law's voice rang through the courtroom so loudly that the court reporter looked up from her keyboard. She rose from the gallery and pointed straight at me, as if I were a fraud instead of the woman who'd spent 24 years serving in uniform. She always does this when things don't go her way. My husband Torben didn't even try to hide his smile. "That's exactly right, Your Honor. She's trying to delay the divorce." I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out. A crushing pressure spread across my chest, as if steel cables were tightening around my ribs with every heartbeat. The room blurred. I took one step, then another, and my knees gave out. Someone shouted my name. Before I hit the floor, a man sprang up from the second row. "I'm a doctor," he called, kneeling beside me, fingers pressed to my neck. His face changed instantly. "Your Honor, she needs medical attention now." For a terrible moment, nobody moved. Then the judge shot to his feet. "Call an ambulance. Clear the room." Chaos broke out. My husband stopped smiling. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was my mother-in-law's face. And for the first time in years, it was full of fear. 3 months earlier, I would have laughed if you'd told me my marriage would end with an ambulance outside a courthouse. My name is Sandra Wessel. I'm 51, and I spent 24 years as a lieutenant colonel running logistics for military medical units. I wasn't the one kicking down doors, but I made sure the people who did had everything they needed to come home alive. Torben and I met in our 20s and built a quiet life near Cologne. No kids, but a house always full of nieces, nephews, and neighborhood kids. For years, our friends called us inseparable. Then I retired, and Torben's mother Ingrid slowly took over our lives. She'd never approved of my career, and after Torben stopped working too, she stopped calling before she visited. She just walked in. Every disagreement, she took his side. Every plan of mine, he quietly canceled. It wasn't dramatic. It was a coastline disappearing wave by wave. Then came the financial surprises. Torben started pushing me to sign documents moving money out of our retirement accounts. When I asked questions, he got angry. "Don't you trust me?" Of course I did. But years in uniform had taught me never to sign what I hadn't read. Ingrid called me controlling. Torben accused me of treating him like a soldier. Around the same time, my health started slipping. Crushing exhaustion, dizziness, a tightness in my chest that came and went. Torben blamed stress. Ingrid laughed it off as attention-seeking. I told myself I'd see a doctor after the holidays, then after New Year's. There was always a reason to wait. Looking back, I think the people closest to us can become so certain they're right that we start doubting our own bodies. One rainy morning, Torben spread out papers for me to sign, transfers involving nearly half our savings, from accounts I didn't recognize. When I refused to sign blind, Ingrid let herself in with her spare key and told me a marriage doesn't work when one person thinks she's the commander. Torben's quiet laugh told me everything. He'd stopped seeing me as his partner. Weeks later, a certified letter arrived that Torben hadn't managed to intercept. It showed a large withdrawal already requested from one of our joint accounts, with my signature on it, except it wasn't my signature. When I confronted him, he admitted it. "It was only temporary," he said. "I was protecting our future." Ingrid arrived minutes later and accused me of overreacting to my own husband's forgery. That night, Torben told me he'd already filed for divorce. He'd made every decision, the lawyer, the accounts, the future, without me. I was simply the last to know. I moved in with my oldest friend Bettina, a retired colonel who took one look at the folder in my hands and said, "I don't think this divorce is really about the marriage." She was right to be suspicious. I hired an attorney, Julia Vogt, who reviewed the financial records and told me quietly, "There's more here than your husband wants anyone to see." Subpoenas went out. Torben's lawyer fought everyone. Meanwhile, my symptoms worsened. Blurred vision, breathlessness, a heart that doctors couldn't yet explain. "Avoid stress," my cardiologist said, which felt almost funny given the divorce. Torben treated every appointment as proof I was faking. Julia eventually warned me that Ingrid had agreed to testify, claiming I invented illness for attention and manipulated Torben through guilt. "She actually believes it," Julia said. "Sometimes people convince themselves their version is the truth." Bettina had her own theory. If Ingrid admitted I was really sick, she'd have to admit she'd ignored it. Then came unexpected support. Colonel Michael Brandt, a military physician who'd reviewed my case, agreed to testify that my symptoms deserved real attention. "Military doctors don't stop caring just because they've retired," he told Julia. On the day of the hearing, I wore the Navy suit I'd worn to military farewells. not to impress the court, but to remember who I still was. Ingrid took the stand first, sweet and composed, describing years of supposed episodes and fake illness whenever I didn't get her way. Julia's cross-examination exposed contradictions, but the damage lingered. Torben testified next, calling me suspicious and implying my health complaints were theater. Never outright calling me a liar, but leaving the impression hanging in the air. Then it was my turn. Torben's attorney pressed me on the lack of a diagnosis, on the delayed hearings, on how stress worsened my symptoms, twisting honesty into evidence against me. As the judge turned to address me, Ingrid shot to her feet. She's just pretending. And that's when the pain hit, sharper than ever before. I grabbed the witness stand as the room spun, and then everything went black. Before I hit the floor, Colonel Brandt was already moving, catching my shoulder, checking my pulse. Your Honor, she needs medical attention immediately. For a frozen second, no one acted, until the judge slammed his hand on the bench and shouted, "Move!" As paramedics rushed in, Brandt said the words that changed everything before a single financial document was even discussed. I believe she's having a cardiac event. Suddenly, the divorce didn't matter anymore. I spent 4 days in cardiac intensive care. My symptoms had been real all along. An underlying heart condition, worsened by unrelenting stress, that everyone around me had dismissed as performance. When enough people tell you your pain is imaginary, Colonel Brandt told me, you eventually stop trusting yourself. A week later, Julia arrived with real news. The judge had ordered a full financial investigation, and it confirmed everything Bettina suspected. Torben had funneled our retirement savings into a secret business venture, and the signature on the withdrawal form wasn't mine. A handwriting expert confirmed the forgery. Detectives got involved. Torben tried reaching me through texts, calls, flowers. I wasn't ready to answer. Ingrid came to the hospital to apologize and left in tears, insisting she didn't know. Maybe she didn't, but I'd learned that believing someone's pain doesn't require understanding it first. A month later, back in the same courtroom, the judge publicly acknowledged Colonel Brandt's actions, then turned to Torben with the financial evidence now fully exposed. Hidden accounts, forged signatures, misleading testimony. Mistakes are accidents, the judge told him. What you did required planning. For the first time, the truth no longer depended on whether anyone believed me. It was written in black ink across hundreds of pages. Life slowly grew quiet again. I sold the house, rented a small townhouse near the base, and finally let my heart heal, walking every morning, attending cardiac rehab, learning that asking for help was wisdom, not weakness. Eventually, Torben sent an email that wasn't full of excuses, just an honest admission. He should have listened when I said something was wrong. We met once at a quiet cafe. He didn't ask for another chance, only forgiveness for himself to work toward. I gave it to him on the condition that we both understood our marriage was over. Months later, I spoke at a support group for military spouses and veterans navigating divorce. Being strong doesn't mean ignoring pain, I told them. If your body is telling you something, listen. If someone you love says they're hurting, believe them until you have reason not to. An older veteran approached me afterward, admitting he'd never believed his own wife's heart symptoms, and that he was going home to apologize. That moment meant more to me than any courtroom victory. Looking back, I don't remember this as the story of a divorce. I remember the people who stood beside me when it mattered. If this story touched you, remember one thing. Never dismiss someone's pain just because you can't see it. Sometimes the strongest people suffer in complete silence, and believing them might not just save a relationship. It might save a life. If this meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about resilience, family, and finding hope after heartbreak.